Brandt DXT grain carts have efficient unload speeds, large carrying capacities, unmatched durability, and reliable components that make sure your cart is working when you are. Lead the field with DXT grain carts from Brandt. Visit your local Brandt dealer for more information.
Oh, there is lots happening in the world of agriculture. And here to get some perspective out of Washington, D.C., it is D.C. policy analyst Jim Wiesemeyer. Hey, Jim, how are we doing?
Really good. We had that shocker USDA report for corn, beans, and even cotton on that, and we're gonna see the market consequences for months.
Yeah, we're kind of well, maybe not kind of. It feels like we're really in a supply box at this point, searching for as much demand as possible to weave our way out of this. This puts more pressure on President Trump than ever, doesn't it, to find some actual trade deals related to ag commodities?
It does. They have to start focusing on ag more now. The National Corn Growers Association this morning is having a presser urging just that, Shaun, and also renewed push for year-round permanent E15 for ethanol, something they said could really significantly increase the utilization of corn. Either way, whether the yield of corn eventually goes down, the demand is still a big question mark. We still have way too much corn. So from a market perspective, and I'm a policy outlook person, not
Yeah.
a commodity outlook person, but all the logic tells me market rallies should be sold. In the case of soybeans, we got a friendly number, so farmers have an opportunity to hedge in some prices here, at least above $10 on the board. But Brazil is going to plant a month from now, basically in earnest. So the higher you go in U.S. soybean prices, the more potentially Brazil could plant for their new crop.
What are the policy like? Is there policy impacts related to yesterday's WASD, or is it just way too early for that?
No, it's never too early for policy. The lower you go on price, the more you pay out in farm program payments, especially for corn, because corn can bust the bank. I mean, it just, yeah, Paul Neiffer said this downward adjustment for corn that USDA made, what, $3.6 billion more. Now, corn farmers won't see that until October 2026, but that season average, marketing year average price has a long ways to go. But that's one implication, more program payments. So that's a mini hedge, if you will, from a policy perspective. Two, as you said, it puts pressure on the Trump administration, USDA, USTR, our trade rep, to ink more trade agreements. The biggest one I see by the end of the year that could turn around the markets would be any U.S.-China new trade agreement. And if you see Trump meeting with Xi Jinping personally, I think the odds are high that they'll say they have a framework agreement. Now that could happen October, November, December this year, but that's one to look out in the future. Now, where's the funding going to come from if this really gets ugly from a price situation? One, input costs are going to go lower. Fertilizer prices, they can't justify them not with corn prices the way they are. Interest rates will be coming down. Probably two, if not three cuts between now and the end of the year. Three, the White House is garnering what, $30 billion in tariff revenues just for July. They stand at $140 billion already for this fiscal year, with the forecast of $300 billion in tariff revenues. Now, let's not get into the argument of who's paying for that. That's money. Now, USDA, although it's a year lag, has 35% of that funding for what we call Section 32. Usually it's used for food aid, some program, farmer payments, but they can adjust that. So to me, that's eventually going to be a Trump administration ATM machine wherever they need it. So watch that for the future. It's like the Commodity Credit Corporation,
Yeah.
even with more money, with more money. So don't think we don't have the money to do a lot of things.
Yeah, and just a reminder, everybody, the Commodity Credit Corporation, the CCC, was that was the mechanism that was used during the first Trump administration for those MFP payments related to the trade issues battle with China during that time period. It's kind of curious. You mentioned that, Jim. That money's being spent like 3 times over that tariff revenue. We're paying down the debt. We're doing all these things. Yeah, the deficit's not going down.
No, it's $37 trillion our current debt.
That's
Uh,
wow.
and look at, we better get lower interest rates because we're spending a lot of money just to service that debt. But look around the world. Let's connect dots as we always do, Shaun. Not only is the U.S. sector, farmer sector, pleading for aid here from a trade policy and a price perspective, but look at your country.
Yeah.
Your prime minister has already announced some gimmies to what, the lumber industry.
Yep. Steel, aluminum.
Your canola is going to argue for it because of the China angle. So you're going to see this around the world. Look at Brazil. I mean, they're going to announce something, I think, by the end of this week, how to deal with the non-exempted tariffs because the Trump administration put 50% tariffs, and they could even go higher. The most important one, orange juice has an exemption, but beef, we import a lot of hamburger from Brazil, and that's sky high right now, and that's adding to the upward thrust in cattle prices.
Yeah, I this isn't just a U.S.
No.
supply issue. There's a lot of countries searching for demand right now, and like if I think there's connection between the Canadian canola situation, as China applies 76% tariffs on canola seed, already on top of the 100% tariffs on meal and oil, along with pork and seafood. That just, China doesn't need Canadian canola right now. Just like they're saying to the market, we don't want, or we've tried not to want, U.S. soybeans. As export sales in the first half of the year, they're down 50% compared to 2024 from the U.S. to China. China is looking to South America right now for supply, and that's a problem for the Canadian and American farmer.
It is. And USDA held with their current estimate of Brazil soybeans for 25, 26, but the trade is 5 to 8 million tons higher. So, I mean, for corn, I should say.
Yeah.
So we could see a lot more corn coming out of Brazil. But here's another angle that I take a lot of calls on China, like they don't need this stuff. Here's what China could possibly do. They could import a lot more of U.S. Products if there is an agreement, and then they can, quote, give a number of their commodities as food aid to a number of countries. So there's a food aid connection on this one relative to China. Don't think that they won't, because that's just a multi-billion-dollar food aid package for China. They think strategically that way.
Going into yesterday morning, Tuesday, I was kind of excited, mostly generated by you. I blame you, Jim. I was mostly excited about the fact that EPA was going to make this announcement relative to death, and I was all prepared. That was going to be the story of the day. I was going to write an opinion column and do all this stuff, and then hell broke loose on a number of fronts. Now, this is when I read what EPA released, my first reaction, the word that came to me was reasonable. Is that fair?
It's absolutely fair. I'll tell you, I'm getting ready to go to a Minnesota Ag Leadership Conference meeting next week in Stillwater, Minnesota. Beautiful area. And I'm putting together some Q&As to interview myself at my PowerPoint. Okay. And one of the questions I get asked all the time, who are the stars of Trump's cabinet? Well, number one is Scott Bessent, because he has to, he's been excellent. He has to deal with an impulsive president called Trump. and he's respected by the trade, by the financial community. Two is Lee Zeldin, EPA administrator. I have never in my 50-year career would have put any EPA administrator as, as a star in any cabinet.
You weren't a fan of Andrew Wheeler? Like, what are you talking about?
Why do I say that? He has been so farmer friendly and energy friendly that I've ever seen. The reason, he listens to his boss, and I've never seen a pro ag president like Trump. If he's focused on agriculture, he'll do what agriculture wants. So, yes, to answer your question, it's very pragmatic. And I didn't think that was a word that EPA understood at all over the decades.
Yeah. And I think on this one, this is an example. I think it starts even earlier because how did the message get to the president in the first place? And I think that actually starts with, I think it starts with Rollins. I think Secretary Rollins has been, I remember a top producer summit going back to the springtime, having those roundtables. And she had numerous farmer roundtables and farmers of a wide spectrum of political opinion, by the way, as well. And I know at the top producer roundtable, this issue around DEF and Tier 4 engines, it came up.
Yeah.
And so I think it starts with Rollins, and it worked its way through, but it takes initiative and commitment to actually see it through. And what I noticed yesterday, I'm sure there's some activists that are going crazy and the world's going to blow up because of, the lack of commitment to emissions reductions. But, to have a semi-trailer, a tractor trailer on the side of the interstate stopped because of DEF issues or running out, or a tractor during planting time, it just seems kind of, it doesn't seem balanced. And so giving more time, weeks, I think it's up to a month on some of the categories, just makes sense to me.
It does. And this is the either reduced regulation or more realistic regulations that was really paramount in Trump 1.0. And now they're maximizing that in Trump 2.0. Trump is unlike any president I've ever covered, and I've been up here since Nixon days, okay? Because he is so unusual because of the speed at which he wants to make decisions. That doesn't mean he doesn't listen to people, but he's bored with multi-meetings or 3 meetings on one topic. He is used to corporations where, hey, this is a problem. Give me options. Let's make a decision. He's non-governmental in that perspective. So that's why you see so many fast decisions, and he doesn't tap that many people. But he does listen. He's the National Economic Council, Council of Economic Advisors, Kevin Hassett.
Yep.
So you and I see that accelerating in the months ahead.
Yeah, and in some applications, I think that really serves him very well, whether you agree with the outcome or not. But I think it serves well. This meeting with Russia and Alaska, that is one where I'm not sure it does. I'm a little bit worried about or what the expectation is that's going to come out of this, but it has an impact on the commodity market because the end of that war, brings potentially more supply back on stream. Or maybe opens things up again, less sanctions on Russia. I'm not really sure. That Russia has some pretty tall demands, including, wanting no peacekeeping, for example. It's not just about territory. It's about, what can actually happen in Ukraine from a weapons standpoint. This is something we'll be following very closely over the weekend. That's going to keep both of us working.
Well, what's the ag angle on this? One is, this is Trump 101. He wants to meet he sizes people up, but he's got to be with them. And that's one of his strengths. He's got to have that person or people in the room. And recall that in his first term, North Korea, he walked out of any agreement with North Korea. Now, what's the market significance of this? This will be in Anchorage, Alaska. Now, the White House is downplaying any major takeaways from this Friday. If there is an agreement, what would it be? And you think China isn't watching? because if China senses any weakness on the part of Trump, what does that mean about Taiwan?
Right.
There's the market significant. China is sitting at that table, even though Xi Jinping is not there. So, and it does make a difference. Europe is involved as well. They should. Trump is going to brief shortly thereafter in a nanosecond the European officials, Ukrainian leadership, etc. This is more of I want to see if Putin is actually wants peace. Recall, Russia's economy is a war economy right now. He actually wants it to continue. Putin is nervous about the Russian economy if there is a ceasefire, if the war ends, because if it doesn't, sanctions with meat, because he's been able to get around them. But if you're seeing what Trump is doing with India from a trade perspective, the energy purchases they're making from Russia, that could also get into China politics too. That's all involved in this Friday meeting, how it turns out.
Jim, on these trade deals, we don't have, I guess, trade peace between Canada and the U.S. That's been sort of parked for at least for the time being. It seems till I heard Treasury Secretary Bissett say till the fall. And with you combine that with the WASDE report that we have and the supply that's out there. Canada, for example, doesn't solve some of those supplies. They already buy a lot of these commodities. It's really China and India. So isn't all of the focus as applies to agriculture should really be pointed in that direction, correct?
I agree. And Brazil, because of
fair,
their significance in the trading community and with the U.S. We have a surplus with Brazil, and look how we're treating them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, on Canada and Mexico, yeah, I just don't. Personally, I think that they've gone the wrong way. It's called North American market. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
85 to 90% of the products are protected, thank goodness, via the whatever you call it, but we call it USMCA. But this could tie into the renegotiation of USMCA. I read the excellent, I like the Canada Globe and Mail, and they've had editorials, opinions about, we're not necessarily thinking the U.S. wants to continue this agreement. So that's still laying out there, but we've got many months for that. July in the formal negotiations, but I think, yeah, it will be into the fall, and I would listen to Scott Bessent on the timeline on Canada and Mexico. But there are allies, and eventually Trump should come around to that North American market.
Great stuff. Hey, Jim, fantastic. Really appreciate you joining us here today.
Anytime, Shaun.